of the Orisenke School of Tea Ceremony, based right here, obviously, in Philadelphia. So just a couple of announcements before we get started. First of all, you'll notice there are some chairs here in front. If you happen to see anybody who looks like they really need to sit down, please, if you could offer them the chair, that would be that would be greatly appreciated. And also, following the demonstration, we are going to be serving tea and sweets for anybody who would like to drink. We do ask for a $5 donation to help us cover the cost of that. So if you would like to drink, just stay after the demonstration, and we will let you know what to do from there. So, my name is Morgan Beard. I'm a tea ceremony instructor from Shofuso, which is the Japanese house and garden right down the street here. And I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about what we're going to be doing today before we get started. So, Japanese tea ceremony traditionally is done in a room. It's often done in a dedicated space within a building, a space that was specifically designed with the correct proportions and architecture to do a tea ceremony. However, what we're demonstrating here is an outdoor style of tea ceremony, where you take the utensils that are often used and they are shrunk down so that they can fit in a small box. So it's a little bit like a picnic style. So you can take your utensils and your hot water source and take them wherever you would like to do tea. So this time of year when the cherry blossoms are blooming, we might, someone might decide to do tea ceremony outside underneath a cherry tree while it's in bloom. So the guests can drink tea, but they can enjoy the cherry blossoms and really take in the season while that happens. So tea ceremony in general is a practice that dates back many centuries in Japan. The roots of it go back even further than that, to the Song Dynasty in China, between the 11th and the 13th centuries. But tea ceremony as we know it today was developed consciously as an effort to take a practice that was very old and full of tradition, but make it something that was accessible and practicable by anyone. So there's an emphasis in tea ceremony on found objects, on objects that have been used for other purposes that are then repurposed for tea ceremony. There's an emphasis on something that we call wabi. It's an aesthetic of something that is very bare and very simple, but that is very beautiful, or rendered very beautiful through use or just through the way that it was created. And it was an effort to make a tea gathering something that is very much about the other people in the room, very much a shared experience. So there is a Zen element to tea ceremony in that tea practitioners throughout many, many generations have taken aspects of Zen Buddhism and used it to make tea ceremony into what could be thought of as a moving meditation. But there's also a very social aspect to it in that the reason for a tea gathering on any particular day is for a host who's going to make the tea and some guests, usually a fairly small number, usually no more than 5, to get together and enjoy each other's company and enjoy the day, and more of that than that, to enjoy the present moment. So a tea ceremony, the name ceremony implies a ritual. It implies something that is very formalized and structured, and tea ceremony is very structured, but it's not a religious ritual. It's simply a practice that can be done by anybody, of any religion, of any background. It is a way to create a space of being in the present moment. So when you go to a tea ceremony, you're not thinking about where you just came from, you're not thinking about what you have to do, when you leave, you're not thinking about that person who pissed you off at work. All you're thinking about is what's here and what's now and what's right in front of you. And when you really focus on what's in front of you, then you have the opportunity to really engage in the moment. You can think about, for example, what does the air smell like right now? What are the sounds that I'm hearing around me? How does the breeze feel on my skin? What does the tea taste like? You are very much, in a very sensory sense, completely in the moment, and that allows you to experience that moment much more fully than you do if half of your mind is somewhere else and running around, as our minds often are, just going through our daily lives. So even though there's many more people here than there would normally be during a tea ceremony, I hope that you all have a chance to maybe experience a little bit of that tranquility as we get started today. So when a tea gathering is being held, the first thing that will happen is that the guests will be invited. Usually that happens several weeks before the gathering, but it could be even a few days if it's a very simple gathering. The guests, if there's more than one, will all gather somewhere else and move into the tea space together. So that's it. So there's not a lot of sitting around beforehand. From even the moment that you enter, you're very focused on what's going to happen. So you're kind of getting into that mindset of being right there. So the guests will enter the tea room. And so here we have a representation of a tea room. These are tatami mats, and this is about the average size of a tea room, about 9 feet by 9 feet. So if you were outdoors, you could use whatever space is available, but even indoors, typically, it would be a fairly small space. So the guests would have a seat, and if there was more than one guest, they would all enter one by one. And then once the guests are all seated, then the host will come out. The first thing the host does is serves a seasonal sweet. The sweet would be based on what's happening in the season right now, and visually, the host would try to create something that evokes the season. So this particular sweet is a type of traditional Japanese sweet called yokan, and it's got some cherry flavoring in it. So in tea ceremony, we try to think just slightly ahead of what's happening in the season. So right now we have cherry blossoms. They're getting a little bit past, we still have some cherry blossoms. And after the cherry blossoms come the fruit. So we eat things that are cherry flavored now because we know in just a little bit the cherries are going to be out, and that'll be an opportunity for us to eat them. So we're thinking ahead. So once the cherries are actually out, then we would be on and we would try to do something seasonally that suggests something in the future, that suggests something that's going to happen later on. So once the sweets are served, then the host comes and starts bringing everything that she needs into the room. So I mentioned before, this is kind of like a picnic style tea. So everything that she needs, aside from the hot water, is in that box there. So she says, "Ipuku sashiagemasu." That means I'm going to make a little bit of tea for you. Ipuku is literally one serving, but the guest can have more than one serving. It's not that strict. She can have a couple servings if she would like. So what you're going to see as the host carries everything into the room is she's going to, once she brings everything in, she's going to start to unpack everything that she needs and arrange everything in order. And then she's going to clean everything in front of the guests. So it's not that everything wasn't cleaned beforehand. Everything is very carefully cleaned before the host even brings it into the room. But the reason that she cleans it in front of the guests is twofold. First of all, to demonstrate that everything is as clean as it can be, but also, more than that, it's to demonstrate a kind of mental and spiritual purity. So the word that we use for cleaning utensils in Japanese it means to purify something, not just to clean something. So you're rendering something not just clean of physical dirt, but clean of mental, psychological dirt as well. And as the host goes through that process of cleaning all the utensils, she's also cleaning her mind. So that as she's making the tea, when she's finally ready to make it, her mind is as clean as it possibly can be. She's not thinking of anything else. And there's no distractions, there's nothing else going on. What she's serving right now is a sweet container, the container of sweets. So for this particular day, the host thought maybe the guests would like a little bit more sweets. But normally, all that you would have for an outdoor gathering like this are some hard candies. They're called kapeto in Japanese. If you've been to Japan, you know they're very popular for all kinds of occasions. So that they're served in that small container and then eaten right before the tea is served. So you're going to see her clean everything before she's just finishing the setup phase here, so you're going to see her clean everything. You're going to see her use some hot water to clean the whisk that's going to be used to make the tea and to warm up the bowl, and then she'll make the tea itself. So while she's going through that process, I'm going to let you just watch for a little bit, and then I'll pick up in the middle with some more explanations. has just invited the guest to have her sweets. The timing of this has been very carefully worked out over the years. So as the guest is eating her sweet, the host is making the tea. She's scooping the powdered tea into the bowl, and she's about to pour water over that and whisk it. So as the host finishes making the tea and she sets the bowl of tea out, the guest should be just finishing up eating her sweets. So that way the sweetness of it is still lingering in her mouth, and the flavor of the sweet is blending with the tea and hopefully complementing it. The host will choose the sweets very carefully so that they do blend well with the taste of the tea. So they might, for example, avoid anything made from dairy, which is going to fight with the tea flavor, or anything that's very strongly flavored. So the tea sweets will typically have a very subtle flavor. So now the host is going to put out a little piece of cloth. This is called a kabuxa, and it insulates the guest's hand from the heat, because the water will be very hot. And it also, if you are doing tea on the ground, protects the bowl from the ground. So that way you're not getting the bottom of the bowl dirty. So the guest has just thanked the host for making the tea. And then she lifts up the bowl. She lifts it just slightly in kancha, giving thanks. And then she turns the bowl and drinks. The reason that she turns the bowl at this point is that every bowl has a front side. It's the side that the host has decided is the best possible side from which to see the bowl, or which to view it. And sometimes it's obvious. In this case, the front of the bowl has a nice picture of flowers on it. So when the host serves the tea, she turns the front of the bowl toward the guest as a sign of respect. Right before she drinks, the guest turns the front of the bowl away from her, so she's not making the good side of the bowl dirty. And now she's doing what's called haiken. She's taking a closer look at the bowl, and she had turned the front of the bowl toward her. So when she looks at it, she's looking at it from the front. She's looking also at the kabuxa, the cloth on which the tea is served, and looking at the details of the bowl. Every bowl is handmade. Every tea bowl is unique. So the guests take a moment to appreciate the uniqueness of each bowl and the way that this bowl is different from any other tea bowl that they may have held or may have had tea from. And then once she's finished with that, she brings the bowl back to the host. And you notice that she's going to turn the bowl one more time so that the front is facing the host. And again, this is a sign of respect, turning the bowl to face the host. So now the first guest has asked the host to finish, and the host has agreed to finish. So the rule in tea is that every guest gets at least one bowl of tea, and then once everybody has had at least one serving, if somebody would like another serving, they can have it. So it's the role of the first guest, the person who drinks first, to determine if anybody else would like some tea. And if everybody is satisfied and nobody wants any more, then at the appropriate time, she will ask he will ask the host to close, as she just did. And the host will very reluctantly say, well, all right, if you insist, I'll finish. And so now she proceeds to clean up. So everything that she took out of the box has now got to go back in there in order to be taken out of the space. So she's going to rinse everything, just kind of give it a preliminary cleaning. one last time before she puts everything away. So you notice that even though the guest now knows that there is no longer any hope of her getting more tea, she hasn't left. She hasn't been like, listen, I got places to be, I'm out of here. So the reason for that is that in tea, the idea is to be relaxed. The idea is to enjoy each other's company and to do it in a very leisurely way. So you're really embracing the idea of having nowhere else to go and having no agenda, which can be a very difficult thing sometimes. But both host and guests take a great deal of pains to make it feel as though they, to each other, to everyone in the room, as though they really don't ever want this gathering to end. So the guest does this by staying and watching and appreciating, even as the host is just cleaning up, just lingering on. And the two might be talking at this point, or if there are guests, the guests might be talking with each other. And the host, for her part, doesn't rush through the ending. She takes her time cleaning everything, so she shows she's not in a hurry to get out either. So everybody just takes a moment to enjoy the feeling of tea and sweets inside them and enjoy the day and enjoy the way that everything has come together to create this moment. First thing she does is take the wastewater away, and then she comes back in for the bowl. I'm sorry, for the box of utensils. And then she bows in the doorway as a final farewell to the guests. What she actually says is "Shitsure tashimashita," which is, if translated literally, is basically "excuse me for having been in the room," which is a very Japanese thing to say whenever you're leaving a room. But it's also a sense of being grateful to the guests for having been there. So gratitude is a very important part of tea, both on the part of the guests. Obviously, they're grateful to the host for having taken the time to prepare this for them, but the host is also grateful to the guests for coming and drinking and enjoying the tea with them. So then the guest leaves once the host has left, and signaling the end of the gathering. So the two might see each other again outside of the tea space, but again, within the tea space, they always take great pains to be very focused and to really just be there and be present. So if they were going to just chat or visit casually, they would do that outside of the tea room. So that concludes the demonstration of the tea. If there are any questions, I would be happy to take questions. But first of all, I need to know who would like to drink tea at that time. And they'll also be chosen to complement the taste of the tea. So they'll be usually very subtle in flavor, and they will be of a type of sweet that will work well with the flavor of the tea. So there's certain types of sweets that have been worked out over the years or established over the years to be especially good for doing tea ceremony, practicing tea ceremony. So once the guests have come into the room, they're served the sweet. Now you notice he's not eating a sweet yet. So we often think, if you're served something, you want to start eating right away. But there's actually a very specific point which you'll see during the course of the tea when they eat their sweets, and I'll talk about why that is in a little bit. So the host starts by saying, "I'm going to make a little bit of tea for you." And she's carrying, the box contains most of the utensils that she'll need, with one exception, which is the wastewater bowl. And what you're going to see as she carries everything into the room is that she's going to unpack the box and set everything out in the order that needs to be set out. And then she's going to clean everything in front of the guests. So it's not that the items weren't cleaned beforehand. Everything is very carefully cleaned before the host even begins the tea, or even it finishes packing up the box. The reason she cleans everything in front of the guests is twofold. First of all, she wants to demonstrate that everything is as clean as it possibly can be. There's no stray dust on there that may have fallen during the course of the tea preparation. But even more importantly, it's to demonstrate a psychological sense of purity and cleanliness. So in tea, when we talk about cleaning utensils, the word that is used in Japanese actually means to purify, not to clean. So the idea is that you're making the items purer through this act of cleaning. You're making them ready to prepare the tea. But you're also at the same time making your spirit cleaner and your spirit purer. So in the tea room, we want to let all of the outside world go away. So you're not thinking about what you were doing this morning. You're not thinking about where you need to go afterwards. You're not thinking about the person you're angry with at work. You're only thinking about what's going on in the tea room at that present moment. What's going on in the tea room right now is that the host just served sweets to the guests. That ceramic container has little pieces of hard candy in there. So normally, I mentioned that this was picnic style tea. Normally, that's all that would be served in terms of sweets. But for today's gathering, the host thought that the guest might want something a little more, so she brought a little bit of an extra sweet out there for the guests to eat. So she's just finished the unpacking process and set everything out to where it needs to be, and now she's going to proceed to clean everything, as I mentioned before. So while she's doing that, I'm going to just let you all sit for a moment and kind of enjoy the quietness of it, and I'll pick up with the explanations again in just a little bit. Just invited the guests to have his sweets. The timing of this has been worked out over the years. So you see now, right now the host is making the tea. She's scooping the powder into the bowl. bowl, and she's going to mix it with hot water and whisk it. And at the same time, the guest is helping himself to sweets. So if the timing works out the way it should be just done eating his sweets when the bowl of tea is served. And that way, the sweetness from the sweets, it can offset the bitterness of the tea in his mouth, and the two flavors combine. Lifts up the bowl slightly, giving thanks, and then turns it. The reason that he turns the bowl is that every bowl has a front side. It's the side that is the best side of the bowl, or most interesting side of the bowl. So when the host serves the tea, she turns the front side of the bowl to face the guest as a sign of respect. When he begins drinking, he turns the front away from him so he's not making the front of the bowl dirty. And now that he's just finished drinking, he's going to turn the front of the bowl back around to face him. This part he's doing is called hiking. He's taking a closer look at the bowl. So he's looking at the shape of it, appreciating the details. Every tea bowl is unique. Every tea bowl is slightly different from the others, and they're all hand-made. So the host has especially chosen the bowl for this day, and especially chosen the fabric that goes underneath it, the corisa. So the guest takes an extra bit of time to appreciate the uniqueness of it, because this is a bowl he might never see again. So he takes that moment to really be present with it. And then he returns to the bowl, and you can see he also, once again, turns the front of the bowl so that it faces the host, again, as a sign of respect. So the first guest has asked the host to close, and the host has said, "Okay, I'll close." So the reason that the first guest says this is that the rule is every guest who's at the gathering, if there were 5 guests, each guest would get a bowl of tea. So they get at least 1 serving, and then if somebody else would like a second serving, they could have one. So it's the job of the first guest, the person who drinks first, to determine if there's anybody else who would like to have some tea. And if the answer is yes, then at the crucial moment, the first guest simply says nothing. And the host will automatically continue making bowls of tea until the first guest tells her, "Okay, we're all right, you can stop now." So having the first guest being satisfied that he doesn't want any more tea, and there not being anyone else guest at this gathering, the host is now beginning to clean up. So everything that came out of the box has to go back in. So she's rinsing everything and wiping it down and doing at least a preliminary cleanup so it's not too dirty when she puts it back in the box. And you notice that even though the guest now knows that the tea is done and he's not going to get any more, he's still here. He's not like, you know what, I got places to be, I'm going to leave. So the reason for that is because in tea ceremony, it's very important for both the host and the guest to express that they're happy to be there, first of all, but that they don't want to rush the gathering. So neither the host nor the guest wants to give the impression that they're in a hurry to leave or they have something else to do. They're there for the gathering, and they're there to be there in this present moment for as long as it lasts, with no agenda, nowhere else to be. So the guest demonstrates that that they still want to be there by remaining and watching the host as she cleans up. And she, for her part, is not rushing the process of cleaning up because she's prolonging the time that everyone can be together. So the host and the guest might talk, under normal circumstances, the guests might talk with each other if there's more than one. So it can be very much a social occasion, and it can be a very relaxed occasion. It doesn't have to be very formal, especially a type of tea like this. So this is a very informal type of tea, and yet you can see there's still a lot of process to it, and there's still a lot of structure to it. The way she starts with the box, the chabako, it's called in Japanese, in front of the fire. She takes the wastewater out of the room, and she'll go back in for the utensils and carry those out also. At the door, she says, she thanks the guest. Now, what she's actually saying is "shitsure tashimashita," which literally means "excuse me for having been in the room," which is a very, very Japanese way of expressing that. So she's kind of excusing herself. Once the hostess left the room, the guests will leave also. And again, that sense of purposefulness and intent is maintained until the very end. So they'll probably see each other again outside the tea room, and they'll say a less formal goodbye. They might, sit and chat for a while. So that is the end of the tea. We seem to have run out of people doing demonstrations here. I will very happily answer any questions you have. But first of all, I need to figure out who is going. Thank you very much. Who's going to drink tea? So if you would like to drink tea.
Everyone in the
only the people on the chairs and on the mats and so forth.